I'm going to talk this very quick talk about the problems, the kind of issues with that. And I'll point to several things that demonstrate this problematism with citizen science. So the first point to highlight is this proliferation of typologies of citizen science. It's actually an indication for me that what's uniting things, what's in common, and trying to figure out. But when you look through the range of typologies, and I have a collection of at least 13 or 15, depending on how you count them, they reveal a lot about the intention of the author and the conceptualization of what's the area more than anything else. So there are the famous one, the kind of one by Shirk and Wiggins and others that are talking about education and so on. And I'm also responsible for one where my own interest on participation and engagement with the influence of geography and planning is very much appearing, but then confronting the problem that unlike, say, Einstein ladder of participation, where there is a strong value judgment toward higher participation and lower toward the bottom, it doesn't apply in this area. Or there is another one kind of trying to make sense of the different technologies and activities and fields of area. So that's one demonstration of the problem here in citizen science. The next one, which Alan absolutely covered, is this issue of definition. So I'm deliberately putting in stark difference the definition of the OECD against the NIH, which actually in the NIH, it came from an institute with a mission to deal with environmental justice. And it couldn't be more different of talking about community project and community-led project. Actually, this collection is now available online, and there is a chapter that will appear in the cost action that is dedicated to citizen science around trying to make sense of these definitions. But they are very different, and you absolutely see the point of view of different people coming in. But also, we need, in the same time as plurality, we do need to understand that there is a specific need for definitions of saying what it is and what isn't. And that's coming now because there are funders and there are policymakers and there are institutions who are trying to do things. And then someone comes and say, well, there is plurality. My thing is called citizen science. And you need to know where to tell it if it's yes or no. And therefore, about 5 months ago, I started coordinating an effort to have a definition without a definition. So instead of trying to make a definition, trying to accommodate a wide range of definitions. So knowing that each discipline will have its own epistemology and ontology and all kind of other things that will shape how citizen science operate. And different programs and funders will also need it. We need to allow them to set out a definition of what is their citizen science, while also to provide a kind of wide spectrum of what the general outline of this field. And that was the aim, to provide a set of characteristics which people can build on. So the way to do that was to reach out and identify factors that influence people's view about an activity. So for example, which area of research, who is leading it, the impact of payment, is paying to run a project considered to be a participation in citizen science or not. To deal with that, we developed a set of vignettes, which are about 70 to 100 words, because citizen science is all about the context. You can't just, if you ask about the factors, it will lead to wrong understanding because there are different situations. And then ask people to grade from 0, which means not citizen science, to 100, completely citizen science, with an option to provide us also justification. And then we reach out to people in research, science communication, policy, and the public, and getting a wide range of views. So the survey looked like something like that. A story which a lot of time in most of the vignettes they having different factors that we identify, 5 that were selected to be absolutely clear citizen science. One of the story, for example, was a version of Hanni von Erkel story in Zooniverse. Another one was from eBird, which is another widely cited project. And then to ask people to read the story, to decide where it is, and then to answer the concept. And then we also had 5 cases that the literature in different places saying this is not citizen science, clinical trial, for example. So we ran the survey. It was way more successful than I ever intended it to be. We had 330 people responding to it, about 5,100 responses grading, which means that for each answer you have about 100 responses, which is really great way of doing that. And this hint of getting the qualitative information also generated huge amount of responses, which we're also looking at analyzing. And what I wanted to kind of demonstrate in this analysis is that although we were probably skewed toward people who had some idea about citizen science, and most people had at least more than a year experience, you see that apart from the crowdfunding case was the only case number 3, where someone is paying to participate in a BTO project, but doesn't do anything about it for receiving the newsletter. That was an absolute no. But almost all other cases are showing ambiguity and people voting for both the top of it and the bottom. And if you see the middle, the 50, where people are saying, well, I'm not sure if it is citizen science or not, is quite common in several cases. And especially it is interesting in the 5 cases that were selected to be absolutely citizen science, even in some of them that were appearing well in the literature, they were noted as, I don't think that that is citizen science. Or the opposite, the cases of a clinical trial where a digital tool was used created ambiguity for the responses. So the literature which saying that this is just simple to say if something is in or out is not. So this is linking to Alan's point about plurality. So as a result of that, this led to creation of characteristics which are currently being finalized and should be ready sometimes next month. And they are including different statements that are calling for plurality. And it was fascinating to see the responses. So for example, in some cases, this is one example that demonstrated the problem in the field of citizen science of saying, actually, it's your intention and framing. In many fields, we're saying, particularly in medical health science and social sciences, there is a subtle difference between citizen science activity and traditional practices that view participants as subject. The view of people as subject is changing the way you do things. So that kind of statement are there to help people to make sense of what is going around them. So that's my start.